Welcome to Hong Kong Brief. The content of the briefing includes: China shows off its C919 passenger jet with flyby of Hong Kong's Victoria Harbour. Hong Kong Tennis Open keeps link to Agassi, Becker era with stalwarts return. Beijing star rises with $17 billion pop in annus horribilis for China stocks. Asia's airlines weigh the cost of China's absent tourists. How can China's economic confidence recover amid confusion and censorship? China shows off its C919 passenger jet with flyby of Hong Kong's Victoria Harbour. Bloomberg. China's aircraft manufacturer, Commercial Aircraft Corp of China Ltd., COMAC, showcased its domestically made passenger plane, the C919, by conducting a low-altitude flyby of Hong Kong's Victoria Harbour. The C919 is designed to compete with narrow-body aircraft from Airbus and Boeing. COMAC claims to have received 1,061 orders for the C919, but only 3 are currently in commercial operation in China. The company also showcased its smaller ARJ-21 aircraft during the week. Hong Kong Tennis Open keeps link to Agassi, Becker era with stalwarts return. South China Morning Post. Ed Hardesty, former executive director of the Hong Kong Tennis Association, is returning to the city as head referee for the Bank of China Hong Kong Tennis Open, which marks the ADP Tour's return to the city after 21 years. Hardesty was assistant referee in 1975 and head referee from 1976 to 1987. Born in England, the doctor moved to Hong Kong with his wife in 1973. Beijing star rises with $17 billion pop in annus horribilis for China stocks. South China Morning Post. A rally in small-cap stocks on the Beijing Stock Exchange has enriched investors by 118 billion Chinese yuan, $17 billion, this quarter, despite poor performance in China's other major markets. The Beijing Stock Exchange 50 index has risen over 40% since late October, marking its first gain since its inception. The rally has been driven by market-friendly regulatory measures and attractive valuations. The euphoria has also been fueled by rumors of a stock connect link with Hong Kong, which could open the door to foreign fund inflows. The Beijing Stock Exchange is a new player in China's markets, having started with 10 debutantes in November 2021. It is now home to 236 listed companies with a combined market capitalization of 412.4 billion Chinese yuan, $59 billion. This pales in comparison to the Shanghai and Shenzhen exchanges, which have market capitalizations of 46 trillion Chinese yuan, $6.6 trillion, and 30.9 trillion Chinese yuan, $4.4 trillion, respectively. Asia's airlines weigh the cost of China's absent tourists. South China Morning Post. The Asia-Pacific region's aviation industry is lagging behind the rest of the world, with volatile oil prices, limited airline capacity, and cost-of-living crises impacting travel demand. The International Air Transport Association, IATA, predicts that the Asia-Pacific region will only return to pre-pandemic travel levels in 2023, with a net profit margin of just 0.5%. In contrast, airlines in other regions, such as Europe and North America, are expected to post profit margins of 3.3% or higher next year. Chinese tourists play a crucial role in the recovery of the Asia-Pacific aviation industry, but international travel demand to and from mainland China is still 40% below 2019 levels. In addition, currency fluctuations and geopolitical factors pose further challenges to the region's airlines. Despite the slow recovery, some Asian carriers are seeing positive results. Singapore Airlines Group, for example, has recovered the fastest and expects passenger capacity to reach 92% of pre-pandemic levels in December. However, other airlines are struggling, and many are shifting their focus away from China and looking to other markets, such as India, to fill the void left by Chinese travelers. How can China's economic confidence recover amid confusion and censorship? South China Morning Post. The phrase establishing the new before abolishing the old has been included in China's guiding principle for setting next year's policy and reform agenda, leading to speculation about its meaning. Some analysts interpret it as a sign that China will prioritize growth in 2024, while others believe it could signal a change in policy towards the property market. Another confusing phrase in the statement refers to non-economic policies that should be included in the assessment of macroeconomic policy consistency. There are concerns that these policies, which have hampered the private sector and foreign investors, are not clearly defined. Chinese president stops over in Guangxi on ASEAN Tech and Ethnic Unity Mission. South China Morning Post. Chinese President Xi Jinping has called for greater efforts to strengthen ethnic unity and progress on IT links with ASEAN countries. During a two-day inspection tour of Nanning in southern China, Xi urged officials to help build a China-ASEAN community with shared interests through increased cooperation in commerce, labor, industry, science and technology, and education. She also visited the China-ASEAN Information Harbour to inspect digitization developments in economic and trade cooperation between China and ASEAN. She is relying more on lieutenants to forge ties with China's political elites. South China Morning Post. Chinese President Xi Jinping has fewer direct connections with members of the Central Committee compared to 5 years ago, according to an analysis by the South China Morning Post. The data shows that Xi relies more on his lieutenants on the Politburo Standing Committee to build relationships with the political elites of the Communist Party. The findings indicate a concentration of power within the party, with the other members of the Politburo Standing Committee collectively having more links with the Central Committee than they did 5 years ago. However, the percentage of direct associations with Xi has decreased, dropping from 32% in 2018 to 22% now. The data also shows that Premier Li Chang, Xi's chief of staff Kai Chi, and party disciplinary chief Li Shi have significantly wider personal networks within the Central Committee than their predecessors. The analysis suggests that Xi is relying more on his deputies to build rapport with those in power at lower levels. China's iPhone ban accelerates across government and state firms. Bloomberg. Chinese government agencies and state-owned firms in 8 provinces have ordered employees to stop using iPhones and other foreign devices at work, furthering Beijing's campaign to reduce reliance on American technology. The move, which coincides with the rising popularity of Huawei, poses a threat to Apple's market share in China. While Chinese software and hardware have gradually displaced U.S. products over the years, the directive marks a step up in the government's efforts to encourage the use of domestic brands. The extent of the bans is not yet clear. Chinese EV maker XPeng plunges after Alibaba plans stake sale. Bloomberg. Shares of Chinese electric vehicle (EV) maker XPeng fell 8.6% after Alibaba announced plans to cut its stake in the company. XPeng's shares slumped after Alibaba subsidiary Taobao China Holding said it intends to sell 25 million of XPeng's American depository receipts, representing a stake worth around $391 million. The companies have previously partnered on autonomous driving capabilities and in-car payment features. XPeng had reported a wider-than-expected Q3 loss last month and is expected to ship fewer than 150,000 vehicles this year. Inter Miami adds Tokyo stop to Messi tour next February. Yahoo! Inter Miami, led by Lionel Messi, will play a match against Japanese champions Vissel Kobe in Tokyo on February 7, 2024. The match is part of a preseason tour that will also include matches in Hong Kong and Riyadh. Inter Miami's chief business officer, Xavier Asensi, said the club is looking forward to getting acquainted with Tokyo's fervent football community and bringing joy to its global fan base. Vissel Kobe is the former club of Andres Iniesta, who will attend the match and reunite with his former Barcelona teammates Messi, Sergio Busquets, and Jordi Alba. Japan's SBI Securities faces penalty for inflating stock prices in IPOs. Nikkei Asia. Japan's securities watchdog has recommended penalties for SBI Securities, the country's largest online brokerage, after finding that it manipulated the opening prices of initial public offerings, IPOs, it underwrote. The Securities and Exchange Surveillance Commission has accused the firm of propping up the opening prices of 3 IPOs between December 2020 and September 2021. The regulator said SBI Securities manipulated buy orders to keep the opening prices above their initial offering prices, artificially creating a market and distorting fair price formation. The Financial Services Agency will consider penalties such as a suspension order. The Vietnamese Guide to Love and War. Bloomberg. Vietnam is successfully navigating the complex geopolitical landscape in Southeast Asia by maintaining a policy of non-alignment and leveraging its relationships with major powers like the US, China, and Japan. Known as bamboo diplomacy, this strategy allows Vietnam to play these countries off against each other while pursuing its own economic agenda. Vietnam has signed agreements with the US, China, and Japan to elevate trade and diplomatic ties, demonstrating its ability to engage with competing interests and thrive. There is evidence to suggest that trade and commerce can help maintain peace between nations, but it must be accompanied by effective military capabilities. Economic sanctions alone have proven ineffective in deterring aggression in the past, as seen in World War I and the 1930s. While trade can be a powerful tool, it must be backed up by strong military deterrence. For example, economic sanctions have had limited effect on Russia's behavior in Ukraine, and it is unlikely that China would be deterred from invading Taiwan solely due to the threat of economic sanctions. Vietnam's approach to territorial disputes with China in the South China Sea has been key to its success. By pursuing an independent foreign strategy and not aligning itself with the US, Vietnam has avoided the forceful response from China that the Philippines has experienced. Cooperation, rather than conflict, has been a defining characteristic of Vietnam's engagement with competing interests, allowing it to thrive despite ongoing disputes. Politics Briefing. Ottawa caps CBC's share of $100 million in Google funds at $7 million. The Globe and Mail. Canada's federal government has capped the CBC's share of the funds under the Online News Act at $7 million Canadian dollars, $5.4 million, with broadcasters gaining no more than $30 million Canadian dollars of the $100 million Canadian dollars pledged by Google. Almost two-thirds of the funds will be directed to written media, including newspapers. In order to qualify for the Google money, news groups will need to show that their content is available via Google search. The final regulations to the Online News Act, published on Friday, follow months of negotiations between Heritage Minister Pascal Saint-Onge and Google, and set out how the legislation will be applied in practice. The decision to cap the amount received by CBC Radio Canada and broadcasters will ensure a larger pot of money is available to a range of news businesses, including local media and those serving Francophone and Indigenous communities. Google will have the option to pay into a collective, a fund run by news businesses, which will distribute the money, overseen by the Canadian Radio, Television and Telecommunications Commission. China's cybersecurity firms tap Hong Kong market amid rising demand for talent. South China Morning Post. Mainland Chinese cybersecurity firms are expanding their activities in Hong Kong in response to the city's growing demand for cybersecurity talent. CNXIN, one of China's largest cybersecurity firms, will establish a research and development and talent training center at the Hong Kong Science Park. The park will also employ the firm to help startups with network security. Beijing Integrity Technology, which provides cybersecurity training to firms, will also establish a presence in Hong Kong next year. Several Hong Kong organizations have suffered cyber attacks this year. US-China engagement is a moral imperative, Hong Kong Forum told. South China Morning Post. The United States and China should view engagement as a moral imperative and build greater trust as they seek to manage tensions, according to a forum in Hong Kong. The speakers at the event warned that relations could be tested by events such as next month's Taiwanese elections. They emphasized the need for increased communication and recognition of the changing global landscape by both Washington and Beijing. The speakers also discussed the role of think tanks and civil society in fostering communication and trust between the two countries. Well, folks, it's your favorite observer from the 6 Degrees World, 6 Doctor, reporting on the latest news from around the globe. We've got quite a mix of stories today, so let's dive right in. First up, China is showing off its C919 passenger jet with a flyby of Hong Kong's Victoria Harbour. This domestically made plane is designed to compete with Airbus and Boeing, and while COMAC claims to have received over 1,000 orders, only 3 are currently in commercial operation in China. So, they still have some work to do to catch up with the big players in the industry. Next, we have the return of the ADP Tour to Hong Kong after 21 years. Ed Hardesty, the former executive director of the Hong Kong Tennis Association, is returning to the city as the head referee for the Bank of China Hong Kong Tennis Open. It's always nice to see a familiar face return to the game, especially after such a long hiatus. Moving on to the stock market, the Beijing Stock Exchange is making waves with a rally in small-cap stocks. Despite poor performance in China's other major markets, the Beijing Stock Exchange 50 index has risen over 40% since late October. This is thanks to market-friendly regulatory measures, attractive valuations, and rumors of a stock connect link with Hong Kong. It's definitely an interesting development in China's markets. Now, let's talk about the aviation industry in the Asia-Pacific region. It's been lagging behind the rest of the world, with limited airline capacity and travel demand still below pre-pandemic levels. Chinese tourists, who play a crucial role in the recovery of the industry, are still not traveling as much as they used to, and other challenges like currency fluctuations and geopolitical factors are also impacting the region's airlines. Some, like Singapore Airlines Group, are seeing positive results, while others are struggling and looking for new markets to fill the void left by Chinese travelers. Speaking of challenges, China's economic policies and reforms are causing confusion and uncertainty. The guiding principle for next year's policy and reform agenda includes some phrases that are open to interpretation, leading to speculation about what they mean. It's important for China to provide clarity and definition to these policies to boost economic confidence. Moving on to politics, Chinese President Xi Jinping is relying more on his lieutenants to forge ties with China's political elites. The data shows that Xi has fewer direct connections with members of the Central Committee compared to 5 years ago. This concentration of power within the party could have implications for China's political landscape. In other news, Chinese government agencies and state-owned firms are ordering employees to stop using iPhones and other foreign devices at work. This is part of Beijing's campaign to reduce reliance on American technology and promote domestic brands like Huawei. It's a blow to Apple's market share in China, but the extent of the bans is not yet clear. And finally, let's talk about sports. Inter Miami, led by Lionel Messi, will be playing a match against Japanese champions Vissel Kobe in Tokyo next February. It's part of a preseason tour that will also include matches in Hong Kong and Riyadh. It's always exciting to see top players like Messi playing in different parts of the world and bringing joy to football fans everywhere. That's it for today's news roundup, folks. I hope you enjoyed my witty and informative take on the latest happenings. Now it's your turn to join the conversation. What are your thoughts on these stories? Do you have any questions for me? The floor is yours, so let's hear what you have to say. Thank you for tuning in. The content above showcases the latest briefing reports and analytical synopses, thoughtfully curated by the 6Do team. These insights stem from a wide array of reputable media outlets, think tanks, government sources, and specialized experts worldwide. We encourage you to explore these sources for a comprehensive perspective. Keep in mind that while the content may not always align with the official standpoint of 6Do Brief, it's not meant to be taken as absolute directives for decision-making. Comprising seasoned media professionals, learned scholars, and accomplished scientists, the 6Do team embodies a trailblazing, fully independent media entity. To customize 6Do Brief to meet your professional needs, you have the option to subscribe to a diverse array of briefings on our website, 6dobrief.com. Regardless of your location, you can conveniently receive 6Do Brief via email.